All right. And we are live. What is up, everybody? Aaron the Dog back with Lucky Locks picks for the Contender Series Week 4, headlined by the mystery man that is Igor Cavalcante versus Siok Hun Ko. But overall, it's some very good fighters on this card. Maybe not the closest of fights at times, but we will talk about that as we go through the card. With me, as always, Lucky Locks picks himself. Coming off another solid week. We've had a solid season in the Contender Series so far. You particularly. I'm throwing myself in with that. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I had a really good long weekend. Played a ton of golf. That's exactly where I'm coming from right now, back from the course here.
Nice.
But yeah, it's been good, man. Contender Series has been good. I'm 14-1 so far. Don't look now. I feel like this is a card where it could be like a 2 or 3 out of 5 on this one because I don't know.
Interesting.
I just get that feeling about some of these. We're due for a little bit of correction in that area. But yeah, it's been fun, and I do think it's a good card here. I'm excited to watch this card. I think we got some good fights, and should be fun.
Yeah. No, but it's definitely I'm interested to talk with you about this card. There's definitely some fighters on here I've been following for a little bit longer than others. Some other fighters who I still have some questions about. What up, Action Jackson? 2 cents. The stubborn Mick himself in the building. We'll start at 155. Gage G Money, a young fighter we're both familiar with, taking on Quinlan Salakilled. That's what I'm going with, at least in this one. One suggestion you made after I think week 1 or so was, let's just wait till after the weigh-ins for some of these fights. And yes, you are just in time, Action Jackson, one of the OGs. With Quinlan and Gage, kind of expected Gage to be the much bigger fighter, at least a little bit bigger. None of the above was the case. Quinlan is much larger than Gage in this spot. Both guys, I think, are kind of just decent grapplers. I'm not sure how good either one is. They look good against kind of a lower level of competition. Gage Young getting submitted by Bobby Lee. It doesn't matter if that's the comedian Bobby Lee or the one from Minnesota, Bobby Lee. It does let me know a little bit about the level you're at. And that might be a level where Quinlan's able to kind of take advantage. And I don't see a finish here, but he might be able to control him a bit in this spot. I think Gage has to just kind of push the pace, push the pressure, use the striking, which I think he does have an advantage here. I don't know, man. And Zach Johnson here, way bigger. Yeah. I don't really care either because I do still think that in this spot, I got to go with Quinlan Salakilled. Maybe it's just the poison I know in Gage Young, which I'm just not super impressed with the fighters he's fought in his last couple as well, leading up to this one. And then again, that face-off, I feel that's significant. A fight that's going to have a lot of grappling in it. I think Quinlan will be able to control him here, but I know we're all a little bit, concerned about when these dogs start showing up. Is this where the first dog shows up for you, Lucky?
No, Salkilda has won 3 lightweight championship fights in Eternal. He's won 6 in a row. Only lost was his debut, and then we got Gage Young. 8-1 guy. All of his pro fights have come in FAC, and he's got a win over Manny Murover via KO. I mean, I think that's solid. David
That's good.
Evans, I think, is a solid win. Young, he's good entertainment. He puts on exciting fights. The one loss you mentioned comes to Bobby Lee via sub, so he's going to need to be careful with the jiu-jitsu game of Salkilled. I think Gage Young probably is the better wrestler here. Salkilled can be taken down, but he's decent off his back. He's got some submissions he can go to. I think, we're really going to see kind of the duality of MMA in this fight. I could see whoever wins this looking like a pretty big favorite. And also at the same time, I could see, like pretty big swings in momentum between them here during this fight as well. Young's got some pop in his shots. I think the ground and pound is probably where, he's the best. And, I think he can get Salkilled down. Like I said, it just might be tougher to get that game off on him than a lot of his other opponents. Salkilled is also, he's been 5 rounds before. He's got lots of good experience. I guess I think, like not to beat a dead horse, I think Young's a better wrestler. I think, he hits a little bit harder, but I think Salkeld is a better submission grappler, maybe a little more polished at range, maybe a little less less dangerous striking, but just a little more polished. So I'm gonna go with Salkeld to win this one.
Sounds like you're describing a Salkeld win and no contract. That's what I kind of heard from this
Yeah,
fight.
we'll see I mean, I could see him getting a finish, so we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think it comes down to. I agree with Noah. Who is the better fighter? I'm gonna also go Salkeld. Nearly a minus 200 favorite, which on this card is the smallest favorite. But plus 165 on Gage. I know I saw 2 cents on Gage Young. Probably is related to Gage Young, like he is to Matthew Semmelsberger. That would be my assumption there. But yeah, Quinlan. I think people are just worried because of what Nicole did a few weeks ago against Jesus Aguilar. So they're just convinced everybody from Oceania cannot grapple now. So this is like our first chance at an Oceania grappler since then. And I think that's where people are a little shy in Salkeld, but call me crazy. Moving on to the next fight here. I mean, good God, what do we really need to say? Minus 925, I think, is the line at this point on Shannon Clark against Uzeni Duben. Shannon Clark, she's going to submit her in round one, I would assume, rather early. So inside 60 seconds live for you, Lucky Locks, because I'm thinking about it myself. I just don't know what the Venezuelan striker does here against Shannon Clark, who is on all of the Mexican supplements.
Yeah, I think Clark is a good prospect at this weight class. I mean, her style is not really the most exciting, but she's very physically imposing and strong. And I remember the first time that I watched her, it was on Unified MMA, and I was really impressed with her physicality and straight up her physique. She looks like she eats her vegetables and gets 8 hours of sleep for sure. I'll tell you that much. 125-pound champ at LFA. And despite her kind of grindy fight style that I was referring to, she has finished 4 to 5 wins. Duben, I mean, I'm really not sure what to think about her. She comes from a traditional martial arts background and Taekwondo and Wushu. And, she's fought every MMA fight against a debuting opponent. And not a single one of those fighters have won a fight yet. So, it's like, what are we doing here? She finished all of them, and I'm really not one to kind of hold success against people. Like when it's like, oh, well, he hasn't fought anybody, but he finished them all in first round. I'm like, okay, but it's just the fact that literally every single one of them never had a pro fight. Not a single one of them has won a fight ever since. It's just a little bit weird. And I know she's at shoot to box, which is good, but I don't know, man. Clark is like an actual prospect at this weight class, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be Shannon Clark for me.
Yeah, and I just don't see this exiting round one. This is a showcase fight for Shannon Clark. And again, everybody's gone and watched the last fight against Lopez, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt that she choked the piss out of. But if you haven't, go check that out also, because that's gnarly. All right, 145. We're in the hyped prospect section of the program here because Austin Bashi, or Bashi, or however you say it, taking on Dorian Ramos, who takes this fight on short notice. We were both saying how it's unfortunate the original opponent, Tommy McMillan, got scrapped from this fight that like last week, which actually ended up okay because that Duffy fighter, he was pretty decent actually on short notice. Surprised a lot of people. I'll be interested here with Dorian Ramos, who, yes, he's been submitted in one of his 2 losses. And overall, I think the grappling is how you really do beat a fighter like Dorian Ramos. I would be kind of interested if he's able to start to, frustrate Austin Bashi, force him to stand a little bit in this. There's the Isaac Thompson fight with LFA that we both, I'm sure, we're familiar with. We probably broke down Dorian Ramos back in the day and don't even remember it. Definitely surprised both of us there, at least me. I was expecting Thompson to go in there and look really good, and Dorian said he was going to get a second round knockout, said he was going to kind of put the man strength on the kid there. And yeah, like it's a similar narrative here. I get it, but obviously I think Austin does fight a much more consistent type of game plan. He's going to be there for at minimum 15 minutes of grappling. if he doesn't finish Dorian ahead of time. But again, if they start to get the takedowns start to get frustrated here, Dorian Ramos does put on a good pace, can definitely start to get to the younger fighter here in Bosch. He's done it before with the Thompson fight. I get Thompson was only his second fight, first fight in the States, but still, that's a good win. Definitely ages well and is a similar type of like mindset going in here. And Dorian Ramos is plus 420 at this point. I'm not betting him yet, but if he gets to plus 500 around the fight time, I am going to take a shot on him at this point, even though Austin Bashi should get through Dorian and submit him here inside the 15. Dorian Ramos at plus 500 is getting a bet from me. But all that said and done, Bashi by submission. I know it's not all that exciting. I'm sure you're not even going to get to minus 250 on that from a prop probably on this fight, but it is what it is. But Ramos at plus 500 will get a donation from me. Lucky.
Yeah, it sucks that McMillan's out. I like the guy. I think he's a pretty good fighter. Bashi has fought some decent regional guys here and there. He's got a great record at 12-0. He finished his last 4 opponents. Oscar is a good win. Penafil was, still a solid win at the time. I don't know about right now. And Zach Riley is a tough veteran. Bashi's the only guy to finish him. Had some canceled fights where he was supposed to be fighting some pretty decent opponents as well, like Ago Huskic and Ricky Bandejas. And, Bashi is, I think, a little bit small for the weight. They have him at 5'3" on Tapology. I don't think he's that short. I think he's like an inch or two taller than that. But, he fought almost all of his fights at 135. I would still like him to be at 135. I don't know whose decision it was to go to that weight class. Maybe it's just too tough to make it now, I guess. I don't know. He is pretty built guy. But Bashi, he's a very good wrestler. He has great speed. It's one thing I noticed a lot about him. He's very fast. Dorian Ramos is pretty decent. Had a very good run on UWC. Went 4-0 there. Beat Isaac Thompson on LFA. Very, very solid win. 2-0 on Combate. Lost to Mateus Camilo on Fury. He's decent. Lost a split to Andrew Cohen on A1. He's all right. Ramos is kind of a grindy, wrestler guy. Not the best jiu-jitsu, not the best off his back. We've seen him get reversed a few times as well. It's kind of similar styles of fighters here. I just feel like Bashi is the better one of these two.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. And, one last point, Austin Bashi. I think most likely from my tribe there because he is from West Bloomfield, Michigan, where most of my relatives are from. Very nice area of Michigan. And Mazel Tov to Austin Bashi on that Jufro. So congratulations to him on that. And as of recording here, minus 660 favorite, plus 420 to Ramos. Very tempting line. Not going to get to it yet. And I do think Bashi gets the finish, most likely, but we shall see. This is definitely a fight on the card I've been very interested to talk with you about. Will Curry, Jordan Santos here at middleweight. They sized up pretty well together. Will Curry, the victim of 2 CDL, Kristen Leroy Duncan losses, and then a kind of a questionable decision loss to Mick Stanton. I think he won that fight, honestly, but it was more of one where I think they're expecting Will Curry to go in there and just mollywop Mick Stanton, which he should have. And yeah. Thank you, John Lee. Appreciate you. The most OG of all the members here. But yeah, with Will Curry, man, he leaves something to be doubted with a lot of these performances. He does, have some, decent finishes along the way here. Last 3, Jorge Bueno, Wallison Henrique, and Leon Aliu. And Aliu being the best one, but like just the types of fighters he's fighting at this point in his career feel very protected, and including here against Jordan Santos. Jordan Santos, I went back and watched the tape on him. He's a decent striker, not a ton of power, kind of has an attritional striking, volume damage. He'll switch stances a lot. I think he's can survive that early onslaught of a Will Curry, though, and that's when I have a lot of questions about Will Curry. In the few fights where he's taken somewhat of a step up, he's not looked that well. So if you're asking me if I'm trusting him as a minus 475 favorite? No, absolutely not. probably gets this done in the first round. Outside the first round, though, I am looking to live bet Jordan Santos because I just think that Will Curry has that kind of model of a lot of guys who come over from England who've been protected throughout their career and then have their debut over here. Saw it last week with Adam Bramhall. Bramhall never looked worse. Looked totally off his game, coming away from the same organization where he had all his fights. With Will Curry, at least it's Cage Warriors he's coming from. So, yes, it's the best of the best. But it's his first time in the States. I do think Santos is a tough fighter who is much worse than him. But after that first round, I think that Will Curry starts to have some doubts as well. So, I am going with Will Curry to win in round one. But after round one, I'm probably going to be live betting Jordan Santos, especially if Jordan Santos loses round one. Or if he wins round one and I can still get a plus number because I don't trust Will Curry. Basically, I don't trust Will Curry. But he's probably going to be in the UFC after this fight, so I'll get to fade him eventually. Lucky.
Yeah, I mean, kind of speaking my language here, man. And I like Cage Warriors a lot. I'm high on a lot of guys from there. You know, I was singing the praises of Lonnie Kavanaugh earlier this year. I still think a guy like George Hardwick is a great prospect, even though he came up short on Contender Series. You know, Luke Riley is a great prospect. He had visa issues. Unfortunately, we won't get to see him on Contender Series. You know, Curry, I don't really think is on the level of those guys, or a guy like Mason Jones, or a guy like Paul Hughes. I just don't really think he's that good. You know, he got to 5-0, having fought only one legit guy, lost twice in a row to CLD, which isn't the end of the world. And you know, he's had a good run since then, beating a few solid guys. You know, 7-1 run. Only Mick Stanton beat him, and you pointed out it wasn't the most, you know, agreed upon decision that we've ever seen that went to Mick Stanton there, but still. And, you know, Stanton's decent. Like, he's better than he seems. But I agree with you, man. Curry just leaves a little bit to be desired for me. And Jordan Santos did not impress me massively on tape. He has fought a worse level of competition than Curry has. You know, the Christian Torres fight
so
gave me the ick, as the girls say. You know, do not get unanimously 30-27 by Christian Torres. Do not do that. I'm going to give him a little bit of grace because it was 5.5 years ago and he's looked better in his more recent fights, but he doesn't look like a great athlete to me. He never looks like he's in great shape. I think that's just kind of how his body composition is, to be fair. You know, he looked a little better in his last fight than in any of his previous fights where he looked a little soft to the body. I thought today on the scales, he looked, you know, all right for his standard. You know, the hardware advantage is definitely going to go to Will Curry here. You know, Curry looks like he's in unbelievable shape every fight, almost too unbelievable. You know, everything he does seems more powerful, more purposeful. And Santos doesn't have any one skill that gives me like a ton of confidence, but it doesn't look like he's overly bad anywhere either. You know, he had some good sprawls in his last fight, was able to get to good positions in the grappling exchanges. You know, he's got a decent jab. His boxing's all right. I think he could be the better boxer, to be honest, you know, especially extended. And, you know, the cardio seemed to check out more or less, you know, in his last fight over 5 rounds. I've definitely seen worse. Doesn't really have the most Contender Series friendly style, to be honest, in a lot of his fights. And like the next layer of investigation is I'm just wondering why he is here, because I can't imagine that like one of the matchmakers looked through his catalog and was like, oh, this guy looks like a killer. Like, we got to get him in here.
He's here to get Will Curry into the UFC.
Yeah, I'm like, is he here because they want Curry in the UFC? Like, is he here because he knows the Bonfim brothers? Because he knows Moicano? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm just not that high on Will Curry, man. And as much as I'm not high on Santos either, like, I don't think he's drawing dead here at all. I'm not. You said it. I'm not big on Curry's viability really at the UFC level, but he is still young. He's got great physical attributes, and maybe he can put it all together on the right circumstances. But I mean, it's a crazy line, man. You got to find a dog somewhere on these Contender Series fights, right? People aren't going to like it if you pick all 5 chalk favorites. So, like, I'm with you. I think Will Curry wins, but for the purposes of the show, I'll go with Jordan Santos and see how stupid I look on the show next week.
No, I feel you. And all of the ways you're describing Will Curry is basically how he could have described Oban Elliott leading up to his Contender Series fight. Oban Elliott was like that lower tier Cage Warrior guy who, of the Cage Warriors, where I was like Harry Hardwick, even George Hardwick, all the Hardwick brothers, like other guys within Cage Warriors. Then there was like Will Curry and Oban Elliott. So these guys who aren't supposed to be making the UFC are making the UFC with more routine. So that's all I'm going to say. minus 475 plus 325 to Jordan Santos. No bet from me yet on Jordan, but definitely considering it, especially at that price. Main event time, Igor Cavalcante, Seok Hun Ko. We've all talked about Igor this week, or a lot of people have. Basically, finding Igor tape seems impossible. Feels like a legend, feels like a myth. I've heard he's got really good striking. He looks to have all his supplements. Seems exciting. I don't know. I was able to watch a few Steel Co fights. He hasn't fought an incredible level of competition. Looks like a technical kickboxer for the most part. This is the fight I am the most lost on, to be honest. I'd love to just doubt and fade the myth of Igor Cavalcante, but I don't know enough about him to do so. So for the purpose of the show, I'll take Igor Cavalcante. I have absolutely no bet on it. Knockout.
Yeah, this fight, I think this Cavalcanti guy is a pretty good prospect. And like you said, it's hard to tell. There's not a lot of tape. He's 9-0 all finishes, jiu-jitsu brown belt. He's done a lot of competing in that world as well. He was the runner-up in the national championship in Brazil. And, everybody knows he hasn't fought anyone of substance so far, but pretty much just waxed everyone in round one. And, some people hold that against guys. I kind of stopped doing that at a certain point. It wasn't a one-time thing. It's 9 fights. It's been pretty much the same result every time. And I know maybe it seems like I do that sometimes, like Adam Bromhold last week, for example. But, the difference is, like, we were seeing Bromhold fight, guys that aren't very good. And, like, he's going to a decision with guys who have a 500 record.
Right.
He's getting finished 2 times in the first round. And now 3 times after last week.
Right.
Cavalcanti, like, we've never seen him take one of these bums the distance. We've never seen this guy get finished or lose. So I say that to say, like, I get why people want to make the argument about, not having a strong strength of schedule. Like, he doesn't have a strong strength of schedule. I really can't say you're wrong.
Welcome to the Contender Series.
Yeah, I don't really hold it too much against him in this instance. And Kosek Hun he's a good fighter. We've seen him out there with some lower level competition, and he hasn't gotten all those guys out of there. It seems like all the half decent guys that he's been in there with actually put up some resistance to him, right? Like, he's going to decisions with guys that are 500. Right. He's getting finished by fighters who are middling at best, right? Kim Han-seol KO'd him in a minute, and that's a guy who on road to UFC is struggling. Sasha Palatnikov KO'd this guy, and Palatnikov is not good.
No.
So, I think Cavalcanti is going to have a good grappling edge. I think he has good hardware. Both of these guys seem to have good hardware. So I think he wins. I'm going to pick him for the purpose of the show, but there's just not enough out there for me to really be like pounding the table. Oh, I think
even the line only being minus 340. I get it. That's significant, but like even they don't know enough to like with how he's being described, he should be minus 700 to me.
Yeah. So I don't really know to
I'd love to be one of the brave boys who bets on the Korean here because like I'd love to, but I can't get there either.
Yeah, I'm going to be on the I'm always as excited for Cage Warriors for Charles Joyner this week.
Yeah, Charlie Joyner and Cage Warriors. There's a lot of good cards this week. We're just going to go real quick through the card. Both on Salakild here, both on Shannon Clark. We're both on Bashi here, but I'm thinking about Ramos at plus 500. Jordan Santos, I would say, is the closest we're coming to the dog on this card, but we are both passing as of now, and then Cavalcante in the main event. So we do agree on all 5 of these fights. A few spots where you could take the dog, but overall, does look like another chalky week of the Contender Series for us here. So we'll see if we can keep the 14-1 Lucky Locks record going. Mine not 14-1, but want to first of all thank Lucky Locks for making the time on the show tonight. As always, we will be here on Monday nights after the weigh-ins. But thank you, Lucky. And then we will be back on Wednesday for the UFC breakdown show, 10 p.m. Eastern. So in about 2 days. Lucky, anything you want to mention before we take off for the night?
Yeah, I got no bets for this card. I don't know if I will. To be honest, there's just not a lot of spots that are screaming at me. I mean, the Jordan Santos, like, line's pretty wide, so like I'm thinking about it, but at the same time, like there was nothing on tape that was like, oh, that's gonna be the thing. Is if Will Curry is kind of like done after 5 minutes, and you're like, hopefully, the skill gap's gonna recess to a point where
Yep.
Santos has some upside. So I don't know if I really want to get involved with that. I don't have anything right now, but yeah, man, thanks for having me on. Thank you for accommodating the time so I could
Absolutely.
get out
No,
there and play
not a
some
problem.
golf on the holiday Monday. But yeah, looking forward to Wednesday as well. Talk about some
Yep.
golf.
Yep. And we'll be back Wednesday with just my 2 cents, myself, and Lucky Locks to break down the UFC show for this week. And then, yeah, next week, UFC Noche. Got a very special panel coming up for that show. We're going to have 5 people on the show. Or all 5 or all 4 guests are returning guests. So you're going to want to check out that because Lewis of Norton MMA makes his return to the UFC breakdown channel after probably a year away or so for Norton, and Gordo Gambles as well making his return to the UFC breakdown show. It's been about a year for him. So Gordo, myself, Lucky Locks, 2 cents for Noche in 2 weeks. On Wednesday, just myself, Lucky, and 2 cents. Thank you. Smash the like button, and God bless, brothers. I wish I would have hit the end stream right on time there, but God had a different plan.